Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rad One Radio. I am your host, Rob Anthony Dyer, and with me today, I have a very special guest who has been very supportive of my show and my creative endeavors. She was the very first person I interviewed last season, and actually was one of the first people in my very first interview I ever did. And you know her as an actress and an author, and here is the multi-talented and awesome Shari Shattuck. Hey, Shari.
Thank you so much. I'm posing. You can't see, but it's radio.
So, you have a book coming out soon.
Yes, I do. June 3rd. It's called Invisible Ellen, and I'm very excited. It's getting some great advanced press, great comments from other authors, and, lots of people around town. And it's just something I've always wanted to write, and so I'm very, very pleased that people seem to be connecting to it.
Oh, I definitely did. I was lucky enough to get an advance copy. Lately, I'm very ADD, as I think you know.
Yeah.
And
not that I would understand that.
No, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I will juggle 3 or 4 books, and it'll be a year before I finish them. But this book, I literally read in 3 days, and then
Oh, great!
I made that audiobook with the speech synthesis, which I still can't get over. I listened to it again, and I was like, I noticed so much more in it.
Isn't it interesting? If I love a book, I very often will both read it and listen to it, because you really do get something different from it.
Absolutely.
Especially something educational, a brief history of time, that kind of stuff. Information just goes in differently. People are wired to receive information differently.
Oh,
some through their eyes, some through their ears, and some through body, motion and body language, that kind of thing. Really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's just a little side note here. I think that's part of the problem with public schools is that teachers don't really adapt to different people's learning styles.
Absolutely. That is so true. It's a problem in all kinds of schools, even very, very expensive schools, because, a lot of those big private schools, they're very concerned about their ranking. So they're very, very concerned about getting the test scores and, having those things so that their school scores really well. And very often the individual kid gets lost in there.
Absolutely. Standardized testing doesn't...
But people are learning. I think people are beginning to learn about that kind of thing, I hope.
I hope so, too. Now... Yeah. For someone who's told me that you hate naming characters, I noticed these characters, their names were no coincidence. So,
well, yeah, I don't really. Sometimes things come up, and I really don't know where they come from. Justice and Temerity are the two. They're twins, and they're in the book. Now, Justice is a name I have heard before. In fact, Steven Seagal, who I did a film with, has a son named Justice, which I thought was really interesting. But that's not why. I chose those names because they represented those people.
Oh, Temerity.
And Temerity is just perfect. Has to be for her.
Yeah.
She's blind but very brave.
She's blind, but she can see what others don't. I mean, there's just...
Exactly.
There's so many levels to it. It seems like every word, every metaphor, every event in the book has a very specific, important reason. And I'm just wondering, is that something you're conscious of when you're writing, or you're just kind of channeling?
I think it is. Yeah, I think what happens is you have a general idea about something. And in this case, I had very strong emotions about these characters and this story because, and it's so interesting, especially with the social media, because people now are coming out who've been through the whole foster care experience and, all these different stories. And so it's something I feel strongly about. And so it's in your brain. But really, where it comes into play, I got to tell you, is on the edit. I just yesterday finished the edit on the sequel for Invisible Ellen.
Oh.
And I wake up this morning like, what am I going to do? But it's really interesting because I find myself going through it, like I said, with a machete. And if a phrase or a sentence or a paragraph doesn't forward my story or the characters, it's out. Because, otherwise you're just kind of talking to yourself and saying the same thing over and over, like you and I like to do sometimes.
Well, sometimes, I find that in conversations, some of my former friends used to get frustrated with me, and I said, no, I'm not repeating myself. If you notice, I chose different words the second time because there's more to it, more subtleties. But no, I agree with you. And you're very good at not using a lot of expository passages where you say a lot through conversations or through the metaphor.
Say it, yeah. The basic bottom line there as a writer, I think, and this is true for someone who says, show it, don't say it. Mm-hmm. So in other words, if I want someone to know that my character is courageous, rather than saying, she's really brave, you create a situation for them in which they don't even think about it, but that's just the person that they are, and that's what comes through. Yeah.
Now, with the backstories, I mean, you did a really good job by giving the readers enough insight into Ellen's backstory and history, but like, again, there was not too much exposition, and you would always, every time, cut to some really funny thing about junk food. I would be like crying over her past for like a paragraph, and then I'd be laughing about her Twinkies and her gravy. And
but that's life, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
in real life, I will never forget when I was doing home hospice care for an aunt of mine who had brain cancer, and it was just one of those horrible times in your life. She was the most beautiful, intelligent, personable person, and here she was, dying of this disease where she could barely, make sense out of anything. But I remember just, sobbing and weeping, and then just having these moments with her of hysterical laughter, because this is what we do. This is a human thing. We have to alleviate the pain with this. And of course, in Ellen's case, and Ellen is the main character of the book, the one who's been through foster care, she's very overweight, she's very unattractive, very unwanted, so she's basically learned to be invisible in society, and the name of the book is Invisible Ellen. And she was starved as a child in the foster care system, she never really had enough food. And very often what happens is later in life, people then, if you've ever been through that, people fortify, they eat too much, they compensate for it because there's that fear of starvation.
she was starved in more ways than one. She was starved
Exactly,
with love.
in many, many ways. Exactly.
So I thought the food was more like also a metaphor, and
It is.
I've known people too who they're insecure and they will use food and gain weight and stuff because it's a protection. It puts a wall.
It's a shield.
It's a shield.
Absolutely.
Instead of being rejected as a person, I'm rejected because I'm fat.
You are so on the money. And I even know women who are very attractive women
Yes.
who gain weight to keep men at bay. Then, of course, what they end up with is men who like bigger women because they're still attractive. And I'm like, well, what'd you think?
Or they get some nasty controlling man because they're desperate. I've seen that too, unfortunately.
That's a whole nother psychological ball of wax there. Well, no, the thing about Ellen, though, is she's so emotionally damaged that she cannot proceed through life and face those fears. So she has to create the shell around her, and whenever those actual emotions come up, it's more than she can bear. So she counteracts it with the food and, just protecting herself all the time.
That's why every time she had a flashback, she had to go get some junk food.
She has to get food. Anytime she has to interact with a human being, she feels very vulnerable and very exposed, and the food is very much like putting on a blanket or a jacket or something. The calories sort of shield her from the world. We've all had those days. We have to have mac and cheese.
Oh yeah, once in a while, definitely. Many people have, whether it's food or alcohol or television, or there's so many things that people.
We all have of course we do. For me, it's hiking, nature, getting
healthy.
out somewhere.
That's healthy.
Right.
I almost thought towards the beginning that Ellen was going to develop superpowers.
Well, that's the whole thing. The big question is always, is she invisible or is she not? And I leave that to the reader.
Right.
Because I do believe that certain things are the reality based on what you see, what you perceive.
I was wondering, Ellen is obviously, to me, she seems quite the opposite of you. You've been a model, you've been an actress, you don't strike me as anybody who's afraid of being seen.
Right. Well, let me tell you about that. Finish the sequel, and it goes more into that with this. And that's a really big point in the second book, actually, is that Temerity does. She negates people whose value is in their physical presence, and they don't know how to handle that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Someone who's used to being beautiful and noticed, and I'm so much more important than everyone else because I'm beautiful. Well, when you meet a blind person, you have no value to them like that.
External beauty, I think, sometimes, comes from the inside, and I think people who take
in combination with, that's the way
exactly.
to go. Yeah.
I've known people, they're really attractive when you first see them, and then you talk to them and they just literally their appearance becomes uglier and uglier to you.
I completely hear you. Yeah. On the other hand, a beautiful smile is a gift for everyone. If it's someone, if you see a pretty girl who takes a minute to smile at an unattractive guy and say hi, and his day is made, and I think that's a wonderful gift, and it can be.
So now, the sequel, is it going to be more of getting into Temerity's background and head?
Well, we do that a little bit, yeah. And of course, the second one so far, and because titles are always tentative, but right now it's called Emerging Ellen. And she's still very much the same person, but she's beginning to realize her responsibility as a human being.
At first, when I was reading this book, I'm like, this is really a departure. But then a little while into it, I'm like, no, it's really not, in fact, because you've always been so great at getting inside these characters' heads and making them really come to life. And
well, isn't that what's more interesting? I mean, yeah, you want to know what's going to happen in a story, but it's characters, I think, that make it,
Yes, character-driven.
Something worth, always. It should be both, I think.
They're so diverse, though. Like, how do you know how to get inside of a meth addict's head and like an immigrant from Russia's head? And, you're so good at that.
Well, a lot of that comes from acting. I played actually Quasimodo, just to be able to learn to be ugly and drool on stage and, to get over that kind of thing. And you have to find a place inside of you. I played insane many times, been a drug addict, but that was a long time ago. But I can relate, maybe not to doing meth or whatever, but I can relate to that being so addicted to a drug, or some people it's alcohol, some people it's food, but I can relate to the addiction aspect of it.
You're extremely empathetic, and that obviously has a lot to do with your acting skills and your writing skills.
Yes, empathy is extremely important.
Now, when Ellen was watching The People, which actually really reminded me of my building in San Francisco with the courtyard in the middle that wasn't
right, she's watching her neighbors, right?
And
she calls them her pets.
Yeah, yes, exactly. She wasn't even making up backstories, really. It was like she was watching TV and just watching the surface level at first.
Yeah, and what I love about this character is one of the main things was she finds this so much more fascinating than watching television, because those people are faking, they're pretending, whereas real life that she's watching is so much more dramatic and so much more interesting, and that is her entertainment,
Yeah.
But she doesn't pass, I mean, other than saying it's wrong to take the handicap seats on the boat, when somebody else needs them. She does record the misdemeanors, but she doesn't make judgment or have an opinion about what should have been done. In the second book, she begins for the first time to comment on things, and that is the next step. And the main reason, of course, is that she cannot emotionally connect to anything, because her emotional past is so horrific.
Well, she made a little progress towards the end of the book.
Yes, no, she does, of course. Yeah, she discovers a friend and realizes someone, who values her for what she is and who she is inside. Right.
Yeah, it's one friend that does that. I mean, even if you just have one friend that accepts you for who you are and knows you and,
absolutely. And laughs at your stupid jokes and, doesn't freak out when you lose it or bitch at them and, I personally, I think you're lucky if you have one friend like that. These people that I know of who, they have 25 girlfriends. I just don't think you can actually be that close to that many people.
You can't really, I think, my mom always told me, she's like, if you can count your true friends on one hand, you're extremely blessed. And if you can count them on two hands, you're super blessed. But if it's any more than that, they're not all your real true friends.
And you'll be exhausted. You just don't have the time for it.
It's like, I used to think of my friends, I had like my inner circle, which was like 4 people. And then there was the next level of people. Okay, I'll see them at social events.
Your friendly acquaintances.
Yeah, I might go out occasionally, have a drink or the movies, but then, it's not like I'm going to confide everything in them. But, some people can't differentiate between that, and they just call you can't possibly, your 10,000 Facebook friends, they're not really your friends,
Right. Well, in that case, what you're dealing with there is a surface level. You have created this personality, or this aspect of your personality that's a character, that's the friend character,
Right.
And that's how you respond to all these people. Well, there's no true, real connection there. Well, this is what I love about, like, the Twitter stuff and all. In general, it's generic stuff, but every once in a while, there's a real exchange with somebody.
There is.
And that's, to me, why I do it. I remember getting into this with my ex. Oh, you're trying to promote yourself. I was like, no, I do it. I don't care. I want to connect to people on a human level. If that happens, great. If not, I'll move on. I don't care if I lose 10,000 followers or whatever. That's not the point. I have somebody that I tweet with whose kid is an ice skater, and I used to be an ice skater. And so, she sends me stuff. Oh, she got a silver medal, I love that. That's something we relate on. Obviously, other authors who relate to things that I do.
Right.
And like I said, I found a number of people who, because of Ellen and the whole foster care experience, I'm now beginning to connect with people who've been through that and are advocates for that sort of, and it's fascinating to me. I love that. So those are, online friends with different aspects, and those things to me have value. They might not be someone that I would associate with a whole lot in my normal life, but we connect on that point, and that's something special. Exactly. At any point where you touch in a real way has value.
That's how I've always felt, because I grew up, I think I've told you the story, I didn't grow up in LA, and I grew up in a suburb of Boston, but I lived next door to a famous guitarist, and when we first moved in, his wife's like, now just treat him like any other person. You know, if he brings up his work, that's fine, but don't. And you know, he was so cool to me. He encouraged me to write my first song, loaned me any equipment I needed. And he was just my neighbor. You know, when I actually,
how great is that?
When I went and saw them in a big arena and went backstage, it was surreal because it was almost like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it didn't belong together. Those two things didn't go together.
Exactly. Yeah. I babysat his kids. I actually babysat like his other rock star, like, because he moved from LA when his other band broke up. I'll just say he was Sammy Hagar's guitarist when Sammy joined.
Fabulous.
When Sammy joined Van Halen, he moved here to join the band Boston.
Right.
So, and Sammy Hagar came and visited. I babysat his dog. It was like no big deal.
But it's such a good perspective check for you.
It is.
Because you grew up realized. That's what I'm talking about. People who grew up in the industry are the ones who can go on and have successful careers rather than getting lost in it. Because they understand that it's just other people. This is the job they chose. And that's the perspective that you were given as a kid because you met this guy was your neighbor. He wasn't a famous guitarist, you know?
Right. And he was like a mentor to me though, too. So, but he was my neighbor who encouraged me and helped me, and I respected that.
Oh, wonderful! That's so great to hear. I love to hear stories like that.
And that's why I think for some reason I gravitate towards people who may have some bit of fame because they're they're artistic, and I like to learn from them. And
right.
I don't think
but you would gravitate towards someone who had no fame but who was very talented,
exactly,
who played for themselves,
exactly,
because that's what you value.
Exactly.
You know, when people value fame, then you're going after the Kardashians, who, as far as I can see, are people with no personal worth.
Do we want to go there? Do we want? You know what's sad? This is something I was talking to somebody else about the other day.
And they could do so much good. Isn't it frustrating? But go ahead.
Yes, it is, because you know what? When somebody is rich and famous for being rich and famous and having no talent, and people say Kris Jenner is a brilliant business manager, and I said, well, if that's the case, that means that she encouraged her daughter to leak a sex tape, and that is so twisted and perverted. You know what I mean? That's how her whole career launched. Kim's career launched.
Well, Chris Rock did a great thing about, I think it was Chris Rock, talking about how she basically just, pimped her daughters.
Yes, she convinced.
And that to me is so sad. It's just
disgusting.
So,
It's like, it's unfathomable. But, I hate the Kardashians. They symbolize everything that's wrong with pop culture.
It's just so sad to me. People, talk about them, and I'm always like, why isn't there anything more interesting? It's so funny because my husband, pretty much every night we sit down and, at the end of the day, and we'll have a conversation. And I realized the other day we were talking about Roman aqueduct, engineering, and then we're talking about nanotechnology and this new, I keep up on a lot of can't keep up with it, but a lot of cancer stuff. And there's this remarkable new treatment where they're actually genetically modifying AIDS virus cells and attacking the cancer with it. And so we're having amazing. So we're having this conversation, and I'm thinking, thank God. I just looked at him and I said, thank God I'm with you. I could not imagine talking about, Honey Boo Boo or this ridiculous. I couldn't do it. I need that stimulation.
Have you ever worked on something and literally just scrapped it and then found it later and said, why did I scrap that?
You mean like with a creative project?
Yeah.
No, what I do, because I don't really like to go backwards, but I take pieces or ideas of things.
Right.
Something like I may have started a book or did a book that I didn't get published, and there'll be a character or a storyline in it, not the major theme, but something that it wasn't ready yet. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was just beginning. It was kind of hatching, and so I can incorporate what I learned from that. It's like homework.
Right.
It's like doing the base homework, laying your foundation, and I can take that and build it into something else. So I do that a lot. But going back to, it's probably different with music. I think that's a little bit different thing. I mean, and remember there's a difference because there are people who don't finish things because they're afraid they will be successful, or because they're afraid they'll put it out there and people will reject it.
What about both? What about both?
Well, both. And you have both. So that's a different read. And in that case, then that is a person who probably should go back and finish that project. I had my first editor. She used to go to a lot of these, they go to these things of wannabe writers, these big conventions and all, and everyone would have a book. And she said, I would always tell people every book should be written, but not every book should be published. In that sense, it's important to finish what you started, but maybe that's, like I said, that's the foundation. You're just learning to find your voice, and then from that experience, you build into something better.
Well, you remember your blog entry where you were talking about the bisexual storyline?
Oh, yeah, exactly, the masculine, feminine.
And then, of course, I made the joke on Twitter knowing exactly what you meant, but I said, yeah, you don't want to do an actual literal one because I tried that in my first novel and it totally derailed it, which is true.
I have a gay couple in the sequel book, and they're dealing with, the prejudice and people, going up against them, and it's a big issue right now, for lots of different people.
Yeah.
But when I was doing the Calloway series, I tried to include a female gay relationship, and the editor made me cut it. When you're writing stuff of which you know nothing, first of all, do some research. It's so much easier these days because all you got to do is go on the computer.
Right.
But here's the trick: find somebody who is an expert in that thing, right? And then double check your stuff with them. Like I have a doctor, obviously I'm the doctors from my work, with City of Hope.
Right.
And so when I write anything that has a medical, aspect to it, I write it vaguely, and then I take it to him, and he checks it for me and tells me right terms, or well, you wouldn't do that, or well, that's that's right. I mean, I can't know everything.
Right.
You can't know everything. I'm a generalist. I know a little bit about a lot of things.
Me too.
But I don't know everything about anything.
That's exactly what I say about myself to people.
It's so true, though, isn't it? Because if you're an interested, creative person, then you're interested in tons of subjects.
Oh, yeah.
But you don't take the time to become a scholar in that one thing.
Right. I want to know a little bit about everything as much as I can, definitely.
Exactly. That's a curious mind. Yeah.
Now, speaking of doctors, I noticed, and actually, it didn't really dawn on me until I listened back to the book, but there was the key turning point in Invisible Ellen was when they got to the hospital, and that's when the healing started. Was that?
Exactly. Yeah. When they get to the hospital. Well, they go to the hospital several times, but you mean when she goes.
Yeah, when the first...
Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting because that is a time that she can't, if someone's helping her, then she has to be seen, she has to face that. She can't hide from them. So that is a turning point for her, but it's a very, very difficult thing for her to have people examining her and looking at her. And,
but she also started to be able to the very seedling stages of empathy, and where she had been before just looking at people as if they were just, like you said, on a screen and weren't real. Yeah,
they're a show. Yeah, she's disconnected from it.
Are you a people watcher? I bet you're a people watcher, right?
Oh, yeah. My husband gets after me all the time. He's like, don't eavesdrop. I'm like, it's fascinating.
Now, do you create...
And this is how I get this. It's amazing what people will say and do.
I know. Do you create backstories in your head when you see people based on their facial expression?
Oh, I do stuff all the time that I hear or see behavior. Of course. I'm a student of human behavior. That's kind of what I do,
Do you think you have to go through painful experiences to be creative? Or do you think somebody who's had a perfectly happy life with no real hardships, do you think they'd be able to be creative?
Yes, if they have the empathy to have had compassion to feel for others, then yes. I mean, first of all, there's no such thing as a perfectly happy life.
I know, but
absolutely everyone. I mean, people will create problems.
It's all relative. Yeah,
it's all relative, of course. And more often than not, I mean, this is almost like a universal truth. Most of the truly funny people in the world come from a great deal of pain.
Oh yeah,
and that was their defense mechanism.
Absolutely.
Was being funny about it, and it made them who they were. And you won't find very many comedians who will just really super popular, funny, kids.
Oh, I'm sure Jay Leno, being as funny looking as he is, had to be the class clown in order to survive.
The geeks and freaks. I mean, this was, I mean, of course you have attractive people who can be very funny as well, Sandra Bullocks and people like that. But the people who are the stand-up comics and all, I think, they almost inevitably come from some sort of kind of harsh childhood. If you're really depressed and sad, if you start marching around the room looking stupid with a big smile on your face, acting like a clown, you cannot stay unhappy. Because it releases all of these chemicals into your body that actually cheer you up.
I'm going to do that.
Sometimes you will see. I remember watching the Eddie Izzard thing, and he's doing Madison Square Garden, whatever.
Was he wearing drag? Was he in drag?
Yes, so fabulous. I adore him.
So funny.
He was kind of half drag on this one, but he slipped again. He's like, I'm actually nervous, and everyone laughed, and then he sort of did this stupid, silly dance. And you could see him go right back into he was fine then.
Yes.
He physically got it out of his body.
Yes.
Like, oh, look how stupid I look. Okay, then, yeah.
You know, if you can laugh at yourself before people laugh at you, then you've already...
Yes, I learned this when I was 12, and I fell flat on my ass in front of 20,000 people in a skating competition.
Yep.
At the very end of my program, slid across the ice into a wet patch. The music ended. I'm literally sitting up but splay-legged, and I literally just threw my arms out like, ta-da! What else was I going to do?
And that takes anybody's power away to make fun of you and make you feel bad because you may
of course I thought I was going to die, but I woke up the next morning. Life went on, amazingly enough,
Yep, that's definitely. Now, the movie, Scream at the Devil, because Speak of the Devil is your book, and Scream at the Devil was the movie that you're in.
Right.
In,
They're completely unrelated.
I'm sorry, I had that confused in the beginning when you said that.
Of course, and understandably so. Well, Speak of the Devil is part of the series. They're based is the psychic, Greer Sand's psychic, and the first one was I Am the Beholder.
Yep.
Beauty is in the eye, behold, speak of the devil, and he will appear. So it's based on those kinds of things, and that's about a psychic. And Speak of the Devil in this case is because a dark presence comes into their community. But in Scream at the Devil, which was written by my husband, not by me, it is about schizophrenia. And a woman who has schizophrenia and sees images of the devil. And we may have talked about this before, but it's fascinating because in the research that I did, the number one in our very Christian society, this is research here for America, the number one person that schizophrenics see is Jesus.
Really?
It's the number one,
I thought it was demons or the devil or something.
No, first was number two is Satan.
Okay.
Number two is Satan. So really, this comes from our, religious upbringing and the things that they say around. So it's a very real phenomenon.
We could do a whole show on that subject.
You could do many shows on that subject. It's fascinating. Yeah, and terrifying. I have so much compassion for these people. Not being able to control what you see and think, it's just horrifying. Yeah.
Hard for you though, because I know when you do a role, you put yourself so into it.
It is. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting, but as an actor, there should be that one part of you. When I played Lady Macbeth and I'm on my, groveling on the ground, lost my mind, sobbing, weeping, there's some part of me saying, this is fun. Because I'm consciously doing it. What disturbs me is the method acting. When people get out of control and they're weeping and they have to go home, I'm like, you're not acting. That's not okay. That's unhealthy.
That's what I've always wondered, and that's, I think, why a lot of these actors end up getting married and divorced so many times and falling in love with their co-stars because they're
married, divorced, drug addict, whatever.
This woman was my love interest in this movie, so they're like kind of a method actor. Then they fall in love with her. Then
there's more to it than that. Very often, what happens is when you're on film, when you're on a production, especially on location, reality ceases to exist, and all you have is that little group around you.
Right.
Whether it's 100 or 200 people, whatever big your film crew is, that's your world, and all your friends at home, your family at home, they're not there on a day-to-day basis, and so these little relationships become magnified. And that's, I think, why people very often fall in love and have affairs on films and move from one co-star to the next. They're lonely. That's who's there.
That's true. I've tried. I haven't acted since high school, but it's something I'd like to get back into. I had a problem though. If I was playing a role, I couldn't break character in between scenes, and it got to the point where my best friend and I were playing enemies in a play, and we ended up becoming enemies because
it can happen. It definitely bleeds. Well, look, when you're creating real emotion, it doesn't go away. It has the same physical drain on your body and influence on you. I remember playing one character that was just evil, and I was in Spain for 2 months or something. I can't remember shooting, and I got to be such a bitch on the set. Now, part of that was because the director was a freak who didn't know what he was doing, and he was endangering people, and I just I'm freaky about that. You don't do that to my crew ever, in
this country it probably wouldn't have happened, right?
Probably not. Yeah, and this guy was a brat. His father had given him the money to make he just didn't know what he was doing. And so it was a tough set. And I remember the last day filming, when I finished, going into my dressing room and pulling off this, outfit, and sat down on the sofa and just started to weep. I could feel this evil shit listing off of me. You have to be conscious of it. Now, if you did it more, you would begin to be able to separate it. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you sound like you were very young and impressionable when this happened to you.
Definitely.
I think the more you do it, the more, you learn, okay, I'm doing that now. But yes, of course, if you're playing, a character that's losing a child, that sadness is going to stay with you throughout the time you're filming. And it takes a while to shake it afterwards. Very often when I finish a production or something, I have to sleep for 3 or 4 days. I'm exhausted. Yeah.
You got to reset your brain, though, and kind of hibernate so you become yourself again, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And get around. I remember I had one friend and her husband traveled with a salesman, and he'd be gone for a week at a time. And she said, every time he comes back into town, we feel like we don't know each other, She said, so every time he comes back, we go to this local Mexican restaurant, we have 2 margaritas. By the end of the second margarita, we're laughing, we're back together again.
Oh, tequila.
And I thought that was so smart, though, because they acknowledged that there was that unfamiliar feeling when you haven't seen someone in a while,
Yeah.
And that's how they got it. Was great,
It is. I think more people don't acknowledge things and they just expect them to go away, and they don't. And
and then that'll happen.
So when you played the schizophrenic, you didn't have to go to therapy and take some antipsychotics for a month to get over it.
It's so funny. I remember one day we finished filming and Jane Park Smith plays one of my neighbor, the evil demon person. Whether she is or not, we don't know. But we finished filming, we're kind of cleaning up around the house, and I got a beer, and she said, how can you drink a beer for that? I said, girl, my job is to go to sleep. I should be back on set in 10 hours, aware,
How do you wind down after a day of intense shooting when you're playing such a crazy character? Do you have trouble?
Well, you need to find a way. For me, it's usually a hot bath or,
couple Ambien.
Some calm time. Reading. No, I can't do drugs because, it keeps my brain's not as tight. But a couple of drinks, as long as it's going to be out of my system in time. Because sometimes, especially if you're playing a physically demanding role, you get so tense and tight that you just don't have time to physically relax. And so alcohol, especially beer, which has hops in it, is actually a muscle relaxant. So it actually can help your neck relax or whatever. Now, I'm not recommending drinking a bottle of scotch.
Oh, God, no.
But a couple of beers really can. I know, go. A couple of beers in a hot bath or shower can really make a huge physical difference. And for me, reading helps me so much. Reading something pleasant or whatever, it puts you in that different world.
Well, your book kept me awake, actually.
Oh, good. Yeah.
That's a good thing.
That's what we're looking for.
In fact, one time I was going to watch TV, but then I had it on my iPad and I was started reading and I was like, oh my God, a whole episode of Y&R just went by and I have no idea what happened. They tuned it all out.
I am so honored. That's the sweetest thing you've ever said to me, Rob.
Aw, well, it's true. You know me.
That's really nice.
You know me.
That's great.
I don't give out fake compliments,
I know you don't. Yeah. No, but thank you, because I know what you mean by that. And I have certain things that I really love to read and do.
So when can we expect the movie? Do you have any ideas?
Oh, no, I don't. I can't really talk about it because, well, I can talk about the movie, but I can't talk about that release because we're in distribution deals now.
Oh, okay. So
I that's for them to say, I can't reveal anything.
I absolutely understand that.
Yeah.
And the book,
but I'm hoping within a few months. I mean, it's a longer process than people realize.
Oh, I'm sure. I know.
It's not like you finish shooting and then you're ready. And we just now finished up all of the technical aspects and it's gone out. Yeah, that's how long it takes, especially when you have effects and stuff like that.
Post-production takes longer than shooting usually.
Right? Yeah, it's a year. Pretty much.
When you record an album, it takes longer to mix and everything than it does to record it. Always.
Yeah, people don't realize.
So, and I know for a fact that a lot of movies, they'll get made and then, you're trying to sell it to, we'll try to distribute it to art house theaters or DVD or whatever, or cable pay-per-view. And then it doesn't get picked up. But then all of a sudden, one of the actors in the movie gets on a hit series on TV, and then everybody wants the movie to be released. Right,
everybody wants it. And, the converse thing to that is so many movies these days are being made with big stars in them and doing nothing.
No.
Not even going to video. I mean, the market is just completely different now. Yeah. And changing as we speak,
People don't go to movie theaters very often because they have their 60-inch HD TV at home and they can pause when they want to go to the bathroom and make popcorn, And they don't
have to watch commercials or deal with somebody talking on their phone in front of them. That's the one. That was the one that finally got me. I was like, get off.
Now, Invisible Ellen, what is the exact release date again?
June 3rd.
Okay, June 3rd. Everybody's got to pick this up because it's going to be
Yay!
on Amazon and Kindle format.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll probably have advanced sales. I'm already doing some promo stuff, so there'll be some contests, where people can, and I'll try to post and keep up with some of that stuff. So if people want, they can, maybe get an advanced copy or something.
And, I'll tweet it out and stuff. Now I'd love to see it in the iTunes store because that's a really good market for that.
Right. Yeah, we got to talk about that.
Yeah. And
yeah,
everybody's got to read this book. I'm telling you, it's definitely something that will challenge people's, sort of the.
But I hope it'll be fun. I mean, I hope. To me, I had fun writing, and I like the characters. I think it's funny, and in certain times and places.
Yeah, it evokes a lot of different emotions, and it's
right.
You don't get heavy for too long, just enough, and then funny, But
because the people who were going through these tragedies seldom sit around going, "Oh, it's so tragic," They're it's just what happens to them. This is another thing I learned from the kids going through the cancer process. This is just the life they're having right now. Right. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They don't want to be treated any differently, if possible.
I think children I don't think would have a concept of death because they're so young. Whereas I think somebody who's older is already kind of aware of their own mortality. Maybe that is something.
Right. Well, you'd be surprised. A lot of these kids, especially the ones who do eventually pass away, can be. I've been so inspired and so remarkably touched because they really do have a sense of it. Not so much of death as of the value of life and the value of the love and the support that they have in their lives. And I have a theory that sometimes these kids, they go through this, they choose this path to give the people in their lives a sense of perspective.
Wow. Yeah.
Because once you've lost a child or known a child who's done that, you just can't go back to being worried about, if my jeans are tight enough or I think it changes your perspective, and I believe it's a gift from these kids because they are amazing, remarkable.
I know, it's amazing positive attitude.
Man, that's probably me just, kidding myself.
No, I think it's amazing what you do for them, and it's very true, and I've seen that as well. I lost a baby brother when he was a baby.
I know, you told me, that's so sad.
But, it was a very tough experience, but it gave me a very different perspective that...
Of course, yeah. Things just, when people get upset about, a scratch on their car or whatever, you're like, that's really important.
Oh, my goodness. My father still gets so angry over the littlest things, and I'm like, it takes a lot to get me mad. Like, I'll grumble and swear because I can't find where I put my phone down 2 seconds ago and stuff like that. But really, honestly, there's just too many things in life that are just way more important than whether a telemarketer pronounces your name wrong,
Exactly. Yeah. They're just, and we all have days when we're more emotionally towards the surface and little things annoy us, or it's that 16th person, and you're like, and then they, there's no cue card saying you are the 16th person to do this annoying thing, so they just think you're a bitch or whatever.
I always catch myself though if I do that, I'm like, I'm so sorry, you were just like this, that was just the straw that camel's back.
It was your turn.
Okay. Exactly.
You were asking for it. Well, no, I'm just kidding.
Well, I don't want to keep you all night, even though I could talk.
I know, we could talk forever.
Yes,
I'm so much fun.
Your book tour, now, do you know when that's starting?
Well, it wouldn't be till June, and book tours, the way that they do things these days, is generally, it will be some event in a particular place, and so they'll let me know if that goes. And I'm doing one in Redondo Beach next week. I think it's next week, couple of weeks. But it's more for booksellers and stuff.
Like a meet and greet at the Barnes & Noble kind of thing, right?
Well, no, this is more booksellers from all over California come and meet a few authors. And it's kind of like, they describe it as speed dating for authors.
To get them to pick up.
Right, exactly, because they, these are the people who recommend the books and sell it. And so it's fun for me, too, because I get to meet a bunch of new people, and I like that.
It's good networking. So are you doing like a book signing events anywhere, meet and greet?
Probably, but I don't know yet. But I will definitely let you know, and if there's anything in particular areas, I'm going to absolutely invite people that I love to meet some of these people that I only know from, social media. It's so fantastic.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to get a chance to do that. That'll be a great perk.
Well, keep keep me posted because, I like to tweet out things that I...
Okay, yeah, I'll try to keep... When I find out stuff like that, especially personal appearances, I will definitely tweet that out.
All right, and I tell you, everybody's got to read Invisible Ellen. It's just
read it.
A great book. It's on so many levels, I just can't say enough about it. I love it.
Oh, thank you, sweetie. I'm very proud of it, and mostly proud that people seem to really be relating to it, and it's speaking to them, and that means a lot to me, because once again, connecting on a human level, that's what I think is most important and what I get the most from. So,
amen. That was part 1 of my chat with Shari Shattuck. Stay tuned for part 2, which will air later this week. Both of us are very ADD, so we tended to go off topic, so the next episode is kind of the outtakes. Thanks for listening.